Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. I've got the biggest grin on my face because today I could see myself in the live. I'm feeling a lot more comfortable in having my own company here. And maybe this is a good way to start today's live, right? We do work on powerful words. Each week we choose a word and we play with it, look at it in different perspectives, right? Maybe in different perspectives that maybe I've never looked at it before or you've never heard of before. Maybe you didn't realize something was a gift until the moment, or sometimes we don't realize that something we've been doing forever and ever and ever is what truly has been tripping us up. So this week we picked this word, and on Monday, when I first looked at the word, I thought it was the word perspective, right? I do believe these kind of things come across our paths for a reason. The next day, I Googled what was the difference between perception and perspective. For me, they seemed very close, and in the explanation, it seemed very, very difficult in its understanding. But I came to the table yesterday with the best lesson that I could in the lesson that I had given myself yesterday in this introspection of what the difference was between perception and perspective. Today, I want to tell a little bit of a story because it is in my own experience. And you might have this same story, slightly unique to yourself, but maybe a story that you could take a look at and maybe reflect a little bit in, whether in the moment or after the live show. Maybe you'll go for an evening walk. Maybe you'll find a few minutes in between making dinner and taking care of the kids, getting them ready for the night, or getting them ready for the day, depending on what part of the world you live in, right? I want to talk about my weight. Necessarily, I didn't want to talk about my weight, but I know our purpose comes from our pain. I do realize that, and I realize the lessons that would suit well with this word, perception, and kind of relate it in a little bit of way of perspective, would be in this huge obstacle that has always been there in my life, right up until this moment. And not just in my life, but in my family's life. And I think epigenetically, going down generations and generations and generations. Uh, right? I am a bigger set lady in this moment. But there was one point in my life where I had reached 311 pounds. Remember what I said, in my family, weight has always been an issue, right? Always been an issue. Surprisingly, my mother and father, it didn't really impact them the way it impacted my grandfather, say, or my uncles. I had two uncles over 600 pounds, and I had my grandmother who was over 500 pounds. Actually got to the point where she had a heart attack. Hello, Andrew. You've heard this story before, Andrew, but we're going to look at it in a different way today. Looking at it in the way of our perceptions of ourselves, right? I wasn't always an obese person, but the way that I was programmed, the way that I was brought up, the way that I was made to think about myself. And we're going to take one moment to wish this to be a false alarm because I think this is stopping in the front of my building. Yes, it is, right? I live in a building full of vulnerables, right? And when it's my days off and I'm taking in lessons, I'm sitting in this, right? I feel it in the building. I really do. And I don't mean to say that in a big smile because, again, right, the fire truck and the ambulance paramedics are in front of the building at this moment, and somebody is having an issue. So I'm not making light of that, right? I'm just taking note that, I wonder why I always seem so lacking in energy when I'm not able to get out of my apartment. And I am able to go out of my apartment. It's in my choices. Do I take one more lesson? Do I do the laundry? Do I make something to eat? Or do I go for a walk? Right? So no matter what, that's my choice. Nobody's dictating it. Okay, so let's get into the word before I start going off the side branches here. Perceptions. My entire life, I really, 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 really thought that I was so huge, that I was so obese that there was nobody like me. There was nobody bigger than me, that I was going to get as big as my grandmother and I was going to get as big as my uncles were, that there were no hopes or dreams where it came to, finding the man of my dreams, right? And having the fairy tale wedding, which I got to have. And I did get to find the man of my dreams in that moment, right? But in my perception, I didn't think that was a possibility. Why? And here's the kicker, you guys, and I'm talking specifically to the highly sensitives, right? To those empathic, right? Human beings, right? And empathic souls, right? Empathic souls. I would like to think that we haven't hardened up in right, our movement forward. But when I look at my graduation pictures, which I just recently done, right? I might even have it here while I'm talking. Maybe I'll just do a quick scroll. And I was a bigger girl. I am a bigger girl. I don't mind having that full figure. In fact, right? I don't mind it at all. But in that idea that somebody's going to call me fatso and hurt my feelings and make me feel that lack of self-worth. And this is where it comes from, the perception, right? Because I had a perspective that I wasn't going to be able to get married, right? Meet my dream man or have that fairy tale wedding, but I dreamed it for myself. Dreamed it for myself anyway, and I got to have that. But that perception I had was planted into me. And I wrote it down here before I'm looking at this. You know, for the most part, right? And I'm not going to say this happens all the time because lots of people, they grow up in households where they are loved and supported and right, and they are encouraged in their endeavors. But not all people get to grow up in those households. They don't. I wasn't one of those children, right? I came up in a household where I was loved. Very much I was loved, right? I was loved by my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, but I never felt that love from my mother. And that was a difficulty for me. And it was one of the reasons that I became highly sensitive and very empathic, right? She's the one that planted those seeds in the beginning into me to say that I wasn't good enough, that I was fat, that I was a right, that I didn't eat enough, or I ate too much, or I ate more than my share, or and that's just directed at my weight. But there was other attacks on my being, in that concern. And I look at that as my mother's limitations. I look at that not just as my mother's loss, because it was my loss too, because I lost that opportunity to be nurtured by my mother, right? I was never nurtured by my mother. But this isn't a story about nurturing. Maybe it is. Right? Self nurturing, self parenting, self loving on ourselves. But when I look, and I'm going to find these pictures now, um, when when I look at my grad pictures, I don't see that, right? Stepping into my own shoes. I never stepped into my own shoes. I always took the word of others when it came to, my contribution or how I presented myself to the world or what I could contribute or what I couldn't contribute or where I was welcomed and where I wasn't welcomed, right? I took my place through the dictations of others, being that highly sensitive, being that empath. My self-worth came from what other people thought of me, right? And if other people thought I was fat, I was fat. I was obese. And truly, well, here's a high school picture, right? Fuller. That's not a good one. We're going back, you guys. This is in the 70s. I think I was maybe 15 or 16 years old there, right? Look how far I'm standing away from that guy. Don't even remember his name, right? And my girlfriend there. But I wasn't fat there, right? I was maybe above slim, but I certainly wasn't obese. And yet I was made to feel that way. Look at how insecure, look at how shy and how embarrassed I am to be standing beside him. Right? This is what I felt about myself. This was the perspective that I had come up with, right? Because of somebody else's perception of me, right? Somebody else's perception of me. I learned that. I studied that. I digested that on a daily basis. I became that. I became that. Okay, let's find the big girl pictures. There's a big girl picture. There's me at 300 pounds, right? That was one of my good friends there. I'm very grateful that I had a connection to Mother Nature and I had really, really good friends along the way, right? By that time, I had accepted who I was, right? Right? Why am I fighting it? And I found solace. I found solace in being that person that everybody thought I should be, right? And here, going back to this note here, we become usually when we're highly sensitive, when we're empathic, right? We're very easy to influence, aren't we? Right? It's again wanting to belong. It's wanting to do for others. It's wanting to make friends. It's wanting people just to like us. Sometimes it's just to tolerate us because we don't know, right? We have these perspectives that we're not good enough to stand next to somebody or talk to somebody. And I'm so grateful at that time that I had that word despite because, it was something instilled in me by the people who loved me that I had every much a right to be in this world as anybody else, right? Hello, Dave. I saw you there. And thank you so much, Andrew, for making note there. I saw that, but I was kind of in that flow of things, just trying to get this out, right? You know, we usually, as empaths and highly sensitive, we become what people think we should be, right? Or we become what people expect us to be, right? Again, because we want to feel welcomed, right? We have lots of disguises. We'll dress a certain way, talk a certain way, go to the same churches, do the same club, do the same sports, whether we like it or not, right? And we can lose ourselves in that, just like I lost myself, right? And I ended up being that big girl, that 311-pound girl that everybody thought I should be or expected me to be. Here's one for you that needed me to be. And I think that's the kicker there, right? For most people, they needed me to be that person, right? Because it made them feel good. It made it so that the flaws that they thought they had, and you can guarantee they thought they had flaws, right? They were just hiding them. They were just covering them, right? It's hard to hide those 311-pound flaws. It was or flaws, right? It was impossible for me to hide that, right? And again, it was impossible for me to be invisible. So what I can't fight in, right? I'm going to work with that because, right, the way that I was brought up, I had every right, to make the best human being that I possibly can, make the best life for myself as I possibly can. And that's where I started. And I think part of that attitude is part of the reason why I've been invited to this party, right? In that expression of my experiences that somebody else can relate in themselves, right? Something that maybe they thought about themselves, but really when they looked in the mirror, right? When they listened to them, when they looked at their artwork of what they were creating in their lives, that they really didn't see that. They saw something a little bit dazzle and amaze. They saw the expertise and the talent, and they moved with that anyway, like I moved with that anyway, even expecting. There's another one of me, 311 pounds. And with that perspective that I had, right? That perspective saying, okay, yes, I'm fat, I'm obese, right? But I'm going to make the best life for myself as I possibly can. And that allowed me to, well, kind of accept the situation. And even though, right, I did learn and I did lose a great amount of weight in that, losing that weight did not make me any happier. I was no happier fat than I was skinny. And that's the truth, right? Because I fixed the outside. Now let me see if I can find a recent picture of the outside. I fixed the outside, and there's a picture of me at, I think I was about 136 pounds at that point. I cut out a guy. I just dated him once, just once, right? It was a great picture of me, Halloween party. But the date was an experience in itself and not worthy of this, right? And yeah, I went from that to that. And I did find my husband, but like I said, I fixed the outside, but I didn't fix the inside. And over the course of the years, right, I gained some weight back, right? Not all of it, because I've taken in some lessons in that span of time, right? But it is that comfortability, I love that word, in my own skin that allows me to make movement now. Because if I was still in that frame of mind and I still had that perspective that I was that person, right? I was that person. I was that person when I was that person, right? When I had lost all that weight, I was still that person. That's what I saw in the mirror, right? That's what I saw in the mirror. And that gave me fear, right? And that gave me uncomfortability, right? It did. It really did. Because I didn't want to get back to that. And I have been up and down like a yo yo, right? Since then, I'm going to say that was over 30 years ago. That was over 30, 90. Yeah, I'll say it's about 35 years ago when I had lost all that weight. Life has improved, right? Since then, I wouldn't be here right now if it hadn't improved in that. But the damage that it's done, right? That perspective I held for, right? That's, I, when did I have? I was pretty close to 30 when I had an operation to help me lose that weight. I had a gastric bypass. It was a long process because there was plastic surgery after that. That was totally unexpected because my perspective at the time was that I was going to lose all that weight and look amazing in my bikini. I did look amazing in a bikini, right? For a little while after I had those surgeries. I had no idea that I was going to have that much loose skin and I was going to look like that. And the honest truth was I looked worse skinny than I did big because I had so much skin. It was just skin and bones and an unhealthy look and getting a little bit of extra weight on me like my doctor had told me, right? It made me feel a little bit better. Nice pic of me at the bar. Bar picture. Okay, I'm looking for a bar picture, Dave. Found another fat picture. Oh my goodness, this one's embarrassing. Whose back is that, you guys? Whose back is that? That's me. 311, 311 pounds. I think that was a year or two before I had that operation to help me lose weight. The bar pictures. I'm looking for bar pictures. Oh, I found the graduation picture. This is my graduation picture, you guys. Okay. Keep in mind, I graduated in 1980. Other than the style of my clothes, would you truly say that I was morbidly obese? Right? This was my perception of myself when I graduated high school. Oh my goodness, right? That is not obese. But because I was the dumping ground for the other things that people did not want to hold on to, and because somebody else feeling worse about themselves made them feel a little bit better about their own limitations and insecurities, right? Being the highly sensitive, being the empath, I took that on, right? That's when I'm 18 years old. 10 years later, I was 311 pounds, right? Well, 10 years later, I would have been on my path to losing that weight, right? I probably 10 years later would have lost all that weight, right? Still haven't come across the bar pictures. I'm looking for bar pictures, Dave. you know, I kept some pictures only because they got damaged, right? I had a flood in my apartment last year, and all these memories were damaged, and I was able to save a few of them, not all of them, but I kept them because just in case I could figure out, oh, bar picture. There's a bar picture. That was me when I was working in the nightclub. That isn't some guy that I didn't know sitting on his lap. That's my best friend and my brother-in-law. Ian, he actually walked me down the aisle. Ian was one of my best friends at this time. We had the most amazing crew, and he watched over me. And his brother Brian watched over me for years. And again, a big part of my story and a big part of the reason why I'm sitting here right now, right, is because of these two brothers that were meant to enmesh in my family. And it's happened, right? Because he's with my sister, right? And he gets to be in my life for the rest of his life, for the rest of mine. And because of the way I believe, the way that I believe, right? In the next life going forward, right? Because we do, right? Travel. I believe this, that we do travel. There's a beautiful picture. That's my father, my dad. He was the most amazing character. Congenital heart disease. Take this congenital heart disease that my father had. This is also a picture of my father. And he was a lumberjack with congenital heart disease. He was a commercial fisherman, congenital heart disease. He was an entrepreneur because for the jobs that he wanted, right, he was not insurable because of his health condition. He never let it stop him. He lived the life that he wanted to. And you can see the date here. This is in May 1960, June, July, August, September. 5 months later, I was born. 5 months from this picture being taken. So my mother was already pregnant with me. So my dad was away. My dad was away from the home a lot his entire life. As long as he was working, he was probably gone 6 months of the year. I think out of necessity because he had a household, like a household full of empaths that loved him dearly, but didn't necessarily get along with each other, right? And that is the truth. So, in closing out today, in this word perception, right? In relationship to perspective, the way I thought about myself and slowly becoming what others expected, wanted, or needed me to be. I became because I was highly sensitive, right? My self worth comes from what other people think of me. And you can see where my self worth went, right? It went right down the toilet. Not forever, right? Because life is always changing through the choices that we make, right? Again, that's my brother-in-law. That's my brother-in-law Ian, my best friend. Those were good times. We're out fishing and camping. Mother Nature has been a part of my life always, 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 right? Like I said, I was no happier skinny than I was as a big girl, right? It's what we think of ourselves. And I didn't think very highly. There's another picture of my father, right? This is my father. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful man. Handsome. He was a handsome man too. All the girls. I know it's 1980 in that picture, but he was. All everybody, men, women, everybody loved my dad. He was that character. Here, another picture of my dad, right? And my grandmother. Look at her. So when we talk about perception, this is the grandmother that got to be 500 pounds, right? She was highly sensitive too. She was a very, very smart lady. I knew that much. And very sensitive to, right, 500 pounds. She got to be 500 pounds. I don't know, right? I was very, very young. By the time I was 12 years old, my grandmother was already gone. But I remember how much I loved her and how much she was like colorful and fun, and how much everybody loved her as much as they loved my dad, right? But what were her perceptions of herself, right? I know what she looked like when I was, right, a child, right? But look at her. She looks happy, right? She's got my dad in her arms. Must have been the joy of her life. But I also know that my grandmother had great difficulties, right, within her own household. And maybe that's a story for another day, because that's my father's story, that's her story, and my grandfather's story. And in the end, because of epigenetics, it becomes my story too. Okay, you guys. That's it. That's all I've got. Let's take a look. I think I work there. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, that's me at the bar. Oh, yeah, I found that picture. I don't have many pictures of myself anymore working at the bar, but it was one of my favorite positions. It was so much fun. The best thing about that job, well, there were lots of good things. I made lots of money, right? I made anywheres from 500. Sometimes I'd have $100 night, but for the most part, somewhere's between 500 and $1,000 a night I made in tip money when I was working at the bar. That was fantastic. It was so much fun, right? It's party, 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 and it was dancing, and it was music, and it was entertainment, and it was making friends, right? It's where I came alive. It's where I became accepted. Just remember, though, even though I was accepted, and even though I might have been pursued at that moment because I had lost all that weight, remember, I was no happier on the inside, right, than I was when I was 311 pounds because of that perception. That's because of me looking in the mirror and not feeling like I was good enough, right? Right? And that was me listening to people, right, that were reminding me that I wasn't good enough, that were needing me to feel like I wasn't good enough, right? Hmm. Okay, you guys. That's my good chair. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Dave, for popping in. For those of you who pop in later, I hope you're having an amazing, amazing beginning of your week, or it's hump day today, right? Maybe you're in the middle of the week. I'm just starting my week. I'm back to work tomorrow for one day. We have Good Friday on Friday, so I do have a day off. I'm going to do something special for myself. Probably I'm going to make myself a nice dinner. I'm going to put a roast in the oven, make a nice dinner. I have been really relaxing the best that I can in the past couple of weeks, only because, well, I feel that need to, because I feel those levels in my well, what I can bring to the table in the moment is lacking. But that's okay. I'm not lacking in the lessons, and I'm not lacking. I'm still showing up here, right? Okay, you guys. That's my good cheer, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.